Alright, hello once again, this is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been going over a series of videos that have been presenting a body mass index or BMI calculator done in several different programming languages. I'm up to the 7th in my series of 8 and I'm working with Android app Inventor. I tried running this right before the previous video ended and I got an error message, and the reason was I didn't have this line in there. This literally had said the word none. And that was giving me an error, but now I'm calling the set status image. So let's try to run it and see if now it does work. So we've got our, let's put in, let's put in 72 and 111. The person should be skinny. Calculate, and indeed skinny came up. I think I'm going to take that and center that, but that's no big thing. Then let's try 177, which should make that person fit, and that works. And let's try 333, that should make that person overweight, and that works. So it all now does appear to be working. All right, I'm going to make a couple superficial changes here, and after I make the superficial changes, then we'll sit and talk about it. So let's go back to the designer. Couple things I don't like. First of all, this yellow and this just doesn't work. Let's try. How about the magenta? Would the magenta work here with yellow? I want you to be able to see that. So, and how about this then with the reverse? That's not bad. Okay, I like the way that looks a lot better. All right. Just so you know, there is a scale to fit that you can use on here. I'm not going to use that. Let's see. That should be good now the way that it is. And I also want to take what was in here and center it. All right, so if we come back into here, again, it's going to have to redraw itself, which takes a minute. You're typically better off going back, connect, reset connection. That's not a good sign. Connect, emulator. But I know now that it works, so I will be able to take a little bit of time, and I guess it won't let me get into the blocks editor either. But logic is logic, and it doesn't matter what programming language you're using. You should have noticed a lot of similarities between the JavaScript and the jQuery, between the C#, the two different C# apps, between the C# and the ASP.NET, between the Java and the C#, between the Java and the Android app Inventor. All right, so again, there are typically more similarities when you write programs and you go from language to language than there are differences. All right. Again, I'm hoping this comes up quickly. Looks like that's a good sign. Just want to see if the coloring looks a little better than it did before. To me, it was very hard to read. Yeah, I like that better. Now, that might be a little too colorful for your taste, but notice if I click calculate, I get non-numeric input, which is good. If I put one of them that's out of range. That's out of range, that's good. And so if I make someone real tall, so they're 7 feet tall, oops, but they only weigh 100 pounds, calculate, they should be skinny, good. If I make somebody very small, but I make them heavier, I calculate, they should be overweight. And if I take somebody and make them maybe 60 inches tall, add there, that's optimal. Okay, so everything now appears to be working. The color is good enough so that everybody can read it okay. All right, so let's go back and take a quick look at the code. We started by creating our three variables: our height, our weight, and our BMI. And you notice that once you create those variables, if you take your mouse and you put it over the variable name, you get either a get or a set. Get will retrieve the value, or as it says, return the value. Excuse me. Set, on the other hand, will set the value. Get is typically called an accessor. Set is typically called a mutator. And you get a get and a set for height. You get a get and a set for weight. You get a get and a set for BMI. All right. Next, we went in and we looked at our clear button. And all our clear button did was it called clear all. And what clear all did was it took our two text boxes, the one that contained the height, the one that contained the weight. It took those two text boxes and zeroed or blanked them out, and it took our label for our result and our image, and it reset those. So it took our label for the result here and removed everything from it, and it reset our image so that the image was the home image, so to speak. All right, so that's all that. Let's collapse that and collapse that and collapse that. When we did our calculate button, all right, our calculate button called validate height and weight, and remember our validate height and weight was our big procedure. What that did was it said if the text box height or the text box weight, if either one of those text boxes was left blank, we took our result field. Remember, our result field is what you see right here. All right, so we took that result field and we set it equal to non-numeric input. On the other hand, if the height that we entered was less than the minimum, which was 12, or the height that we entered was greater than the maximum, which we said was 96, or the weight was less than 1, which was the minimum, or the weight was greater than 777, that was the maximum, then, even though we put in a number, it was an out-of-range input. If it's not non-numeric and if it's not out of range, then it was a valid number. So we called calculate the BMI and set status and image. All right, as far as calculating the BMI, it wasn't the whole lot. We set our height, our variable height, to whatever was in that text box. We set our variable weight to whatever was in that text box. We did our BMI formula, which was the weight divided by the height squared, that whole thing, times 703, and then we formatted the BMI we had just figured out so it was 2 decimal places. All right, and after we calculated the BMI, we set the status and the image. Now again, I could have done this as more than one routine, but I made it as kind of one big routine here. Let me take this one and collapse this so that's out of the way. So, if the BMI was less than 18.5, we set the label to underweight followed by the BMI. Could have actually even done this. We could have said underweight space dash space. Maybe that would have been a little better. Overweight space dash space, oops, space, and optimal weight space dash space. All right. So if their BMI was less than 18.5, we set the label to underweight than the BMI, and we set the picture to skinny. If it was greater than 25, we set the label to overweight and the image to overweight, plus the BMI, of course, and otherwise they were of optimal weight with the BMI and fit. So that should be everything. So again, notice if I do this, now I've got the dash in there. You may or may not like that, but optimal weight, 19.53. Underweight, 10.98. Overweight, 175.75. So that's it. When I come back, what I'm going to attempt to do, I've already written this as an Android application, but I've decided what I'd like to do instead. I'll show you what I did, so I will write that one. But then I will create, after I write that one, I will go back. I'm going to see if I can replicate what I did here. And if I can replicate it using Android Studio and making an Android app out of this. In the one I'm going to show you, it doesn't have pictures and the like, but I'm going to see if I can add that stuff just for completeness sake. So I'll be back with that presentation shortly.